The journey into game dev is one that generally follows a common path for many people. Maybe your interest is piqued from seeing a Brackeys tutorial about Unity. It spurs a thought that has always been in the back of your mind that this is something you might want to try. You download your engine of choice and start playing around with its capabilities. Eventually, you find some concepts that stick, and before you know it, the project you began as a hobby has evolved into a fully fleshed out idea that you want to show to the world. My name is Kai, and we are Last Chance Studios. My journey looked much like this common path as well, and my passion project takes the form of Tyrant, a roguelike looter shooter. What exactly is a roguelike looter shooter, you may ask? To be honest, I didn't really have a clue myself, but I had a clear idea in my head of what I wanted this amalgamation of game genres to look like. In my mind, this epic mashup of games such as Borderlands and Hades had me brainstorming into the early hours of the morning. I felt like I had a concept that could actually go somewhere, and I wanted to tell others about it. The logical next step for a project like this was to bring in other like-minded people who could get on board with the idea. One of my favorite parts about the indie game community is that there is no shortage of amazingly talented individuals. So needless to say, the search was on. I can easily say that the team we have assembled thus far has been doing some amazing work. Our voice actors, Ashley and Paxson, have been breathing life into the characters I initially had scrawled onto paper, taking them in directions I didn't even think were possible. The amazing tracks that our producer Darren has been pumping out elevate the levels in combat to new heights, and the wonderful character art being done by Palinka Dot adds a visual style to the characters that further builds on the game's aesthetic. Suffice to say, we are a small but mighty team that has great passion towards furthering this game's development. The world of Tyrant takes the player into a physical representation of an antagonistic artificial intelligence hardware. As the player, you take control of Zeta.exe, a firewall program that has been tasked with clearing out a computer virus that's been implanted into the AI. There is a massive story component to the game, but for this video, I want to focus on the gameplay concepts that make Tyrant unique. The game has been in consistent development for a solid 6 months now, but I want to focus the rest of this initial devlog on highlighting the 2 features that I feel make Tyrant what it is. That being the roguelike gameplay elements, as well as how we provide the player with an ample and diverse array of weaponry. To me, the ideal roguelike has a good balance of randomness and skill. An initial inspiration for the game's structure was Hades. I really like how no 2 runs in Hades turn out the same, but no matter what, you always feel like the ability to win is in your hands as the player. Don't get me wrong, games such as The Binding of Isaac have a place in my heart and are staples of the roguelike genre, but for my purposes, I felt as though that game can be a bit too random at times, with how some runs feel practically unwinnable given player luck. And yes, it is entirely possible that that's just a skill issue. Sticking with this theme, I decided to implement a basic structure where players move through a persistent floor, where the set number of encounters per floor is always the same on every run, but what encounters you get always changes. Upon researching how to do this, I got into the weeds with Unreal's level streaming system. Basically, each floor would be a persistent level, and each encounter could be a streamed level into that floor. On paper, this seemed fairly straightforward, but in practice, things were definitely hard to implement. For example, teleporting into a new encounter where the level just flat out wasn't there led to many falls into bottomless pits, or the completely wrong level showing up were both fairly common occurrences early on. Eventually, I devised a sort of tagging system where the game would always know where to drop the player after the level transition sequence completes. This wrapped up the room generation setup quite nicely, and also had the added modularity of adding and removing rooms as I pleased, whether it be elite enemy encounters or unique rewards. A cornerstone of any roguelike is the metagaming progression system that enables the player to go from humble beginnings to power trip fantasies across many and many runs. The main way Tyrant accomplishes this is by introducing rarity-based loot drops during runs. For anyone that has played games like Borderlands or Destiny, this is going to feel similar, but with the fresh gameplay twist of operating within a roguelike framework. The idea is that over time, the player scavenges loot on their runs and eventually fleshes out their arsenal with the types of weapons that suit their style of gameplay. Additionally, there will be some light skill tree elements allowing players to further spec into specific build types. More on this in future videos. The natural barrier to implementing a large-scale looting system like this is obvious. How do you create enough weapon variety to make repeated runs enjoyable and fulfilling for the player, and also do so with relative ease and flexibility? For this, I again took inspiration from the Borderlands series' robust gun generation system. Now, by no means am I claiming to have billions upon billions of guns in Tyrant. However, I am rather proud of the setup we landed on. For anyone familiar with Unreal development, you know that custom data structures are extremely helpful when implementing just about anything in the engine. This approach acted as the foundation for our gun engine setup as well. Every weapon has a slew of stats that are all derived from data table templates. Everything from damage to reload speed is all plugged into rows in the data table, and through blueprints, I am able to use this as fuel for runtime-based gun generation. Getting everything to speak to each other correctly in Unreal was a huge challenge initially, but over time, things got refined and we landed in a pretty good spot. Bugs popped up left and right. Guns would generate without certain key stats. Tooltips would have no insight into the actual information about the gun, and of course, how all of this gun data would actually be stored once the player does pick up the loot was a huge challenge in and of itself. In fact, the inventory setup that we use likely deserves an entire devlog on its own. The setup has been very fun to use so far, and it has been especially easy to add new gun types as we think of them. That being an incredibly important characteristic for a game like Tyrant, where the game is only as fun as the weapons we are able to implement. The combination of looter-shooter within a roguelike framework is at the core of Tyrant, and is the primary driving force behind all subsequent design philosophy. There is so much more that is already built, and even more in the works with the game, but for today, this was all we had time to show you all. The team is super excited to finally be showing the community the work we have been working so hard on, and hope that these devlogs start to get across the passion we have for Tyrant. If you've stuck around until the end of the video, thank you. And if the idea of a looter-shooter roguelike interests you, then please subscribe to keep up to date with the project's development. Kai from Last Chance Studios signing off, and we'll see you next time.